Hey everybody, Comic Crack, back with yet another in my long line of gaming videos here. This is Aries number 8 that I just got in the mail the other day. Board Game Geek is just coming through like crazy for games, as far as they have a marketplace. On every single games page there's a marketplace giving you links for games on eBay or ones that people are selling through the website themselves. There's also, I've been finding some links in some forums where people are selling stuff, and they have kind of mini auctions through the site where you kind of bid, and if you win, it all gets processed through the board game site. You get an official email with like an order number and a PayPal account to send payment to. So this particular guy had a number of Aries games, I think 3 or 4, but this was the only one that still came with the magazine. The other ones were just the game themselves, and I'm interested more in getting the magazine as well. This one's in a little rougher shape than my other Aries magazines, but still really cool to have. Brings my total up to 4, I think now. 5 maybe. Anyway, I've got a few of them now, is the point. And this, as you can see, is Ragnarok, the Twilight of the Gods. There's the rules, or sorry, the magazine itself, and here's the rules. This time it's only it's a short rule book. There's no paragraph system. It's just a hex and counter. I'll show you the board here. A hex and counter style map. There's one of the forces there. There's another forces there. The Jotun, sorry, and the Aesir. The pronunciation in a lot of this is going to be awful, so you've been forewarned. And basically it is the let me just see, the Aesir race of Norse gods, including people such as Loki, which is over here, are making their way across the Rainbow Bridge to the plains of Vigrid to attack Asgard. The idea is that 1 or 2 or 20 or 30 or however many your forces, they have to make their way through the map, break through the walls, and exit this side of the map in between these points here. So not through here, they actually have to break through the walls of Asgard and escape off the map, and if they do that, they win. The Jotun forces, their sole purpose is to destroy and not let that happen. Let me move this out of the way for a second. Oh, well, I guess I'll talk first about this. As per usual, the Aries magazine rules are fairly horrible. It's frustrating to read a rule book or a rule pamphlet or whatever and have to skip ahead a couple of sections to read about something that's referenced. Say in like 4.2, there'll be all of a sudden a reference to paragraph 9.1. Just the layout of it is really, it's just poorly done. There's some things that are at the end of the rules that really should be at the beginning, and just the layout and what's included in each section is really, really difficult to follow. Thankfully, our man Callendale has a video also on this page, which I will reference once or twice. So at least in as much as there's errors in his gameplay, which is by no means a criticism, there's errors in my gameplay videos too. It's what happens, especially with these style of games. It does get confusing. There is shit that goes wrong. At least there was kind of it gave me an idea of how to start off the game, because quite honestly, even starting the game there was confusion on my part as to what happens and how movement happens. And it turned out that some of the movement for the beginning of the game is listed right at the very end of the instruction manual, not where you'd think it should be at all. You'd think it would be one of the first things when they're talking about game components, then game setup. You'd think that right after that it would be, let's talk about movement. The movement at the beginning of the game is laid out like this, you know. So very, very confusing. That said, I'm starting to make heads and tails of it now. There's still a few things that I'm sure will come up that I'll get wrong, but I feel like I have a little bit of a better grasp on it now. So, setup of the game. Aesir units here. There's a few things, as I said, they enter the plane of Vigrid and their journey to Asgard across the Rainbow Bridge. Heimdall is positioned at hex number 0101. He can't move, he has no movement values. On the hero tokens, or chits, or there's 3 numbers. Heimdall has a 10, a 0, and a 1. The 10 is his attack strength, the 0 is his movement strength, and the 1 is his defense strength. You want a low defense strength. Lower is better, and I'll explain to you why when we get to there. So that's where he starts the game. No Jotun forces enter the battlefield at the start during the setup. The other part of the setup is everybody has a character token with their name and a triangle on it, and there's a name on each of the squares where they start off, and this is basically their endurance level. So what endurance level they're at off the top of the game. Through fighting, you can start to move these levels down. Once they get to the 1, they've basically passed out or become incapacitated. The next step is off the board and dead, basically. So that's how you track all of that. A number of tables. The Rainbow Bridge collapse table, you can overload. If you have 4 or fewer on any one of these, there's no check to be done. If you have 5, that's where you start to, 5 on any of these, that's when you start doing the check. There's various things that are going to happen with each. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 or more, there's more chances for disaster to happen. And what can basically happen is that you can make the Rainbow Bridge collapse, which means that you've then cut yourself off from getting more forces onto the battlefield. So then you're kind of left with whatever it is that you have. Through maneuvering and things, though, it's safe to say that you can get away with 4 or 5 at a time. Kill off Heimdall, which is your first kind of mission, and then start making your way. The turns are made up of a number of different phases, movement phases and attack phases for both heroes and units. So heroes, for example, would be Loki, Fenrir, Hrym, Surt, Garm, and the Serpent. The units would be the Frost Giants and the Fire Giants. As it says on space number 1 here, Loki, Fenrir, Hrym, and all Frost Giants must pass through this box before Surt, Garm, the Midgard Serpent, and the Fire Giants can enter the track. So I've divided it like that. So all of these have to make their way through the bridge before I can even consider moving any of these units across the bridge. There's a marker for incapacitated units. You can get incapacitated throughout the game, which basically stops your force from moving and battling. So that's just a marker to let you know that that group on a particular hex have been incapacitated. So while you're moving these through the Rainbow Bridge, the Jotun forces are standing by when do the Jotun forces get to move? This was the thing that puzzled me for the longest time until I saw Callendale's video and then actually found it in the rules myself. What you do is you roll 1 dice and you add 2 to it. So if I had rolled a 4, that would be 6. So I'd have to wait 6 turns before I could start placing counters onto the track, onto the map. So that would give these forces 6 turns to start making their way, which would be 1 turn. The next turn they would move up and you'd add more, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then they could start making their way onto the map. How they make their way onto the map is a variety of things. For the heroes themselves, you roll a dice for each of them. So you take Tyr, roll 1 dice. A 2, no. Thor, a 4, no. Freyr, a 3, no. Vidar, a 4, no. Let's say for Vidar, actually you rolled a 1. Every time you roll a 1, that particular hero is going to make his way. He's going to be able to enter the map. The only exception is Odin. Odin enters the map immediately. Once you've rolled and you roll a 1, Odin automatically comes with in the first instance that happens, which is something that Callendale didn't have in his video. I think in his videos Odin was there up to the very end of the game, which is incorrect. So he actually never played with Odin, who's particularly strong and has some special abilities, as do all of the, or most of the heroes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I seem to be missing a hero from there. I'll have to look. Oh no, he's right there, of course. Heimdall is right there. So that's how they come on. You have to roll a 1 and they'll get to enter. That, of course, happens till all of your heroes are gone. Then you don't have to do that part of it. Warriors and Valkyrie are similar. You roll a dice. Let me just get to the page here to remind myself. Let's see. Okay, so I've been saying it wrong. These are the Jotun forces and these are the Aesir player, I think is what it is. To determine how many warrior units enter, the Aesir player rolls 1 dice and subtracts 1 from the result. The resulting figure is the number of warrior units that can enter the map on that turn. To determine the number of reinforcing Valkyrie units, the Aesir player rolls 1 dice and subtracts 2 from the result. The resulting figure is the number of Valkyrie units that enter the map. So that's how that goes. So roll a dice, subtract 1. That's how many warrior units will come with you. Roll the dice and subtract 2. That's how many Valkyrie units will come onto the map on your next turn. Berserk. These chits here are Berserk, and they basically, there's a couple of players that can transform warrior counters on their hex into Berserk counters, and it basically gives them a little bit of an advantage. Their attack is 1 higher, their defense is 1 lower, which again is a good thing, and their movement value goes up by 1 point as well too. I don't know when they kind of switch back to being warriors. I don't know if I'd have to check again. I think once they've switched to Berserk, they remain Berserk, even if they leave the hex where their hero has had them placed. So Aesir forces, Jotun forces. Let me just read this again. Yeah, Jotun forces, Aesir forces. I believe I had that reversed at the beginning. So then basically that's what it remains to be. It's basically moving units and spreading them across the board and creating some sort of plan of attack to bust through the Aesir units to get to Asgard to overtake it and run off the board. So it becomes kind of a standoff. By the looks of it on Callendale's video, a lot of the standoff happened right around here. There's other various effects for terrain effect. It, for example, tells you how many movement points it's going to cost at various parts. If you're moving through the forest, excuse me, it's going to cost you 2 movement points. And you're going to have a -1 to attack rating if the defender is in the forest. Valkyries cannot attack or be attacked by units in the forest. So there's various things that are going to happen to you. It's one thing to talk about the attacks themselves. Most of the time you have to be on the same hex as who you're attacking. There are differences when the Jotun units are 1 hex away from the Aesir units. They can then attack from 1 hex side by each. They don't have to move on to the same hex. There's limitations as to what can be on 1 hex at one particular time. Off the top of my head, I can't remember what it is. I believe it was, I don't even want to say. We'll get to that when we go through the gameplay of the video and I follow up on it. There's modifications, there's modifiers for mortal enemy combat. So Freyr, for example, is +1 when he goes up against Surt. Heimdall is +1 when he goes up against Loki. Odin is +1 when he's versing Fenrir, etc., etc. There's Aesir modifications and Jotun modifications. There's a damage table. If a frost giant was attacking a warrior, he would take his attack number, which is 7, add it to the warrior's defense, which is 3, gives you 10. You'd roll the dice, you'd roll 3 dice. If you rolled under a 10, which I rolled a 10, so if you rolled a 10 or less, the number or less, that would be a hit. You then roll 2 dice, which in this case gives you 7. We'd go down to 7. So when your target is, up here it says if your target is a hero, you read off of this table. If your target is a unit, which it was in this case, you'd go down this table and it would be 1. And then if it's a blinding light attack, which Heimdall can do and Odin can do, I believe. I can't remember. I believe so. Then there's different things that happen. You can incapacitate them or eliminate them. And then of course there's some where nothing happens, but that's very few of them. So that's how fights are determined. And of course when you're looking at these numbers, that means it's off of this table here, your endurance table. One thing that Callendale said that this game turned out to be was just a huge dice rolling event after event after event. There wasn't much in the way of strategy. It just became a head-to-head battle where you're just rolling 1,000,000 dice throughout the whole game. Sort of appeals to me, sort of not. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how enjoyable it is. Again, I think this might be a perfect game for Mr. Tom. It would give us a chance to battle and roll dice, and I think he would get a kick out of it. I will say off the top, for myself personally, I've never really a big fantasy type of fan. This one does interest me a little bit, but it's this. I think I've said this in a previous video. It's the sci-fi type of themes that appeal to me more. This one itself, because it's a little more simpler. Not to say that it is simple. It seems to be a little simpler in strategy and movement and gameplay. Again, without having played it, who knows once we get into it. That appeals to me a little more, and the fact that it's Thor and Loki and Odin and stuff appeals to me too. But we'll see how it feels overall. The theme for this one, like the feel, it's something that I end up talking about in a lot of videos. Psycho Raiders, Federation Commander, Return of the Stainless Steel Rat, etc., etc., all these other games I've been playing are so heavy in theme that it really draws me into the game. All the extra bits and stories and artwork and things that come with it really help draw me into the game, which I really enjoy, and I think it's a really big part of it for me. This is one that doesn't really. The theme is there for sure. It's just not as strong for me, and again, that might come back to just the simple fact that the fantasy element doesn't do it for me as much. Even it has been mocked on the board game site, even that cover. I mean, I don't dislike it as much as some of the other people had mentioned, but it's not my favorite thing. I've had a brief look through this. I haven't sat and read through the whole thing or soaked up every single page, but you get a little bit of history, and then you get a little bit of breakdown of the different characters and who they were in the mythology. And let's see if we can find, here we go. Facts for Fantasy. I believe they cover some of the errata there too, although it doesn't look like it. Anyway, the theme isn't as strong in this one for sure. But I do like the map size. It's not overwhelming. It seems like it'll be a fairly quick play to get into battle once we've kind of passed this Rainbow Bridge part. And just a note, I've got Callendale had tweezers to pick things up, and I thought that was a pretty good idea, so I stole the wife's. So hopefully that'll help me out a little bit in playing. What else can I tell you here? Damage table, terrain effects, attack rating modifications, disengagement table. You have to roll to see if you can get out of a fight. You have to get out of it somehow. Warrior unit holding box. The Aesir player can use this space to hold warrior units that are currently replaced by berserk units, so which leads me to believe that they can change back to regular warrior units since they have this space. And then just a little terrain key that shows you what things are: bridge, gates, walls, forest, river. The walls and the doors do have kind of an attack value to them. I think it's 1 for walls, 2 for doors, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it's vice versa. So you do have to kind of attack and be able to destroy parts of it before you can break in. You can't just walk in through the front door. You actually have to attack the door or attack the wall and make a hole. Then that becomes the entranceway for more of your forces, if there's any left to get through. The other thing that Callendale said too, which it seemed apparent from watching his videos, that the Aesir forces kind of outmatched the Jotun forces. They were a little bit stronger. It might have been a little uneven as far as gameplay. Similar thing I was talking about in Psycho Raiders, about the Psycho Raiders themselves. Definitely overpowering in the kind of campers or those players. It's definitely slanted in one direction. His video really made that apparent. But we'll see what happens. Again, it might come down to a number of factors. It might come down to how you spread your units out, who you bring through first, that sort of thing. So we'll see. Overall, I'm kind of looking forward to playing it. I've set it up yesterday. I didn't have a chance to play it last night, so hoping to get a little bit of a gameplay video in tonight. And yeah, so that's that. Thanks very much for watching. That's Ares issue number 8, Ragnarok, the Twilight of the Gods.